Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We are back to regular programming, and we are going to continue with our Wednesday morning class. Hopefully back on regular schedule, and I look forward to it. So we are on page 194, day 63, and let's get cracking over here, okay? So the question's like this. This is an interesting question. This falls under the general category of lashon hara, rechilos, but it's a little different of a situation over here. The situation is where let's just read the dilemma, right? Your brother has been dating for several years and hasn't found his best shirt, means to say his match. He has clearly stated that he wants a very intellectual and well-read girl with a master's degrees and a well-paying profession. Right? This is just throwing it out there. Whatever it is, he wants an artist. He wants this. He wants that. Or vice versa. She wants someone that is X, Y, and Z. Right? You know, a wonderful young woman with sterling midos, right? Great attributes, but who is not particularly brilliant. In your opinion, she's really what your brother needs. And may you push the match despite her non-intellectual nature, if you think it might work. So this is a general question, very common with matchmaking, right? And matchmaking doesn't mean to say you have to be a professional, right? But in matchmaking means to say that you are, trying to set your friend up or a sibling or a coworker or whatever it is. And, a lot of times people have what they think they need, right, as we call it. People have, what they envision, but not necessarily is that really the best for them. Not necessarily is that the one that's going to click. And the reason why they're having such trouble is because they're looking for something that's not really for them, and it just doesn't click. And this happens more often than not. It does. It happens often. Sometimes you see some people say, "Really, what are they doing together?" But just they mesh, right? I don't know. They just work because of the opposites attract, or just they complement each other, or whatever it is, right? But over here, one of the individuals, in our case, it's the man, or it could be the girl, right? Has very set that no, this is what I need, this is what I want. And but you think that really there's a different one. So are you allowed to push it? Are you allowed to push it? So the halacha is when suggesting a relationship, a person has to avoid transgressing the prohibition against putting a stumbling block before the blind, right? So there's a prohibition of not putting lifnei iver lo sitein mechshol. Do not put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Now, of course, it's referring to literally a blind person, right? You have to be very careful. But the rabbis teach us that this is referring to advice. This is referring to giving suggestions, right? Which Chazal interpret as an offering unsound advice. If someone has clearly stated a preference, you are in fact required to tell him that the relationship you are suggesting varies from that preference, right? So meaning to say like this, because you are trying to get the person to go out with that other individual, right? So you are, to a certain degree, even though you think it's the right thing, your advice is good advice. It's not done to hurt. It's not done to be malicious, right? But at the same time, right, he could come back to you and say, "What are you doing?" I start talking to her about, I don't know, some historical thing or some, financial thing or stock market or whatever it is, some scientific thing, and she had no clue what I was talking about. And why do you tell me? Why do you tell me that she was intelligent or not lying? But why didn't you say that? I assumed that she was because that's what I wanted, and we didn't have anything to talk about. So it might work that it was the best date ever because that's what you really thought, and that's true. But at the same time, you have to go ahead and you have to be. You have to say that, listen, just trust me, right? Yes, she's not as intelligent as you typically would like, right? She's or he is not, doesn't have the best paying job. It's not some fancy, suitcase carrying, briefcase carrying job, whatever it is, right? But trust me, please, just go out with her or with him right? And I'm telling you, you're going to see that you're really going to like it. You'll see, try something different. You have to use your persuasive personality to convince the person to go out with the other person, right? But at the same time, you cannot straight out lie, and you cannot not lie. I'm not leaving out a fact. You cannot leave out that fact, right? You cannot. If it's something that's essential, something that's core, right? You cannot leave out that fact, and that's something that's it's extremely important to remember because putting a stumbling block in front of someone, a lot of times people think that that's referring to, giving bad advice. Oh, you should invest in that stock. I'm telling you, and you know it's not good, right? But you want them to invest in it, and if whatever, and then you're going to somehow either you won't win out, or you just want them to lose money because you don't like that they're richer than you. Some malicious, some bad intention. That's what people think typically, that's what lifnei iver l'sita michshol is. But it's not necessarily true. Lifnei iver l'sita michshol is even if you have good intentions, but if you are leaving out some crucial facts, right, that are directly against what the person wants, you can't do that. If it's not something necessarily, it's something that's been in conversation, something that he or she cares about, but it's not sort of like, whoa, right? So then there's wiggle room. There's room to minutia the information a little bit. But if it's something directly, right, that the person said, this is what I want. I know what I want. I'm clear. And it's something that everybody knows. It's something that you've had long conversations about. You cannot just pretend that you forgot about that. And that's a problem of lifnei iver l'sita michshol. So that's something to reflect on and to think about. Just to catch Emily up, welcome. Hey,
sorry.
No, it's fine. So we're on page 194, day 63. So we're just talking about a situation over here where you think that this shidduch, right, this person is a perfect person for someone, but they are lacking character traits that the person specifically has said that he or she wants. Over here, we're talking about that intelligent and a well-paying job, profession, blah blah blah. Right, vice versa. It could be artist, or whatever it is. But we're talking about a situation, right, where you are suggesting something to someone that is lacking, and that's not bad or good. It's just a preference. Is lacking in that, but you think it's the best. You have to let them know that they're missing that component. The answer is that, welcome, Suzette, it's good to see you. All right.
Thank you.
The answer is that, as we said, there's a prohibition of lifnei iver l'sita michshol. One should not put a stumbling block in front of someone. And typically what we think lifnei iver l'sita michshol, putting a stumbling block in front of someone, typically we associate with something bad, giving back bad stock advice, telling someone to buy something or to do something when it's not good for them. Either you will benefit out of it, or you'll just get a kick out of them getting hurt, or whatever it is, right? Typically we assume that it's referring to when there's a bad intention involved. And we're learning over here that lifnei iver l'sita michshol is not necessarily only when there's a bad intention. Lifnei iver l'sita michshol is referring to when you know that you're giving advice that the other person, or suggesting something that the other person specifically does not want. Right? So if you think that this is a great match, right? That's just the case we're talking about over here. If you think it's a great match, right? So you have to tell the person, listen, I know this is not exactly what you're looking for, right? But trust me, just go out. I really think that you're going to really like this person. All right. She's not the most intelligent, like you like. She's intelligent, but she's not like, encyclopedia, right? She has a good job, but it's not some hotspot profession, or she's not artistic, even though you think you want someone that's artistic. Whatever it is, right? You have to try to, convince the other person to go out with, but you cannot lie, and you cannot hold back this crucial information. That is still part of lifnei iver l'sita michshol. And that's what we're talking about now. And this is an important thing to think about in general, right? With friends, with family, with children, with with coworkers, with community. A lot of times we think that we are doing the right thing and we have good intentions, right, by leaving out certain pieces of information or by avoiding certain things, right? If the information is something that is needed, and again, it's case by case, and it's something that is expected or whatever it is, that still falls under lifnei v'leshita michshol. One has to be very careful that by giving advice, even if you have good intentions, one has to be careful that they're still not putting a stumbling block in front of the other person. Over here, the stumbling block is not necessarily something bad, but the other person feeling like they wasted their time, feeling like they were cheated out of something or they were misled or whatever it is, right? That's also part of lifnei v'leshita michshol. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so I want to talk about page 95. We haven't done this paragraph. I mean, we've jumped around a little bit, but I think this is something very important to reflect on. Righteous anger, right? That's how it's called, right? So this happens more often than not. It does. It happens sometimes. It happens a lot of times. And it happens a lot of times subconsciously. We don't even realize we're doing this, right? And I'm not going to read through the whole paragraph, but basically, you got a job, right? You work in some company or whatever it is, and now someone got being a manager or whatever it is, department head, and they have some authority, and you think that they're being arrogant and doing a terrible job in their job. But let's put a little background to this. You've had a bad experience with this person, right? If it's from childhood, right? There's scenarios. Funny scenario, right? It's a rabbi's son, whatever. Who cares, right? But whatever it is, right? You have a bad experience from previous, experiences as a child. Your parents didn't get along. Whatever it may be, right? But you have bad experience because a person has hurt you, right? Or hurt someone that you care about. Right, and it could have been a legitimate thing. It could be it was in your head, right? Whatever it is, it could be a little bit of both. Usually, it's a little bit of both, right? When someone gets hurt, it's a lot. The being so severe is in your head, but there's a reason why it's in your head because there was something there, right? The blown out of proportion is in your head, but it's based off something. And now, right, you want to go ahead and tell your boss, right, that they made a terrible mistake, right? That this person is arrogant, this person is bad, you shouldn't be hiring them. And just, you could continue with, when you were a child, the person always, scream at people, people just say he's doing a terrible job, blah, 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 character traits are bad. We're not talking about where there's actually legitimate things that the person is doing bad. We spoke about that previously, right? This is more of an emotional anger character trait of the person, right? Based off previous experiences, right? So are you allowed to, you're doing this to us, right? You're warning your boss, right? That to avoid a catastrophe over here. To other people shouldn't be hurt, right? So that's why they're calling it righteous anger. You are coming from a righteous place. You are going to be the rooter of evil, right? You're going to root out evil, right? You're going to make sure that no one else gets hurt, right? You're going to bring this out into the open. Right? You're going to be the one that's going to make sure that everybody knows how bad this person is and no one else is going to get hurt. And this is a scenario of a boss. It could be a neighbor, it could be in the community. Someone comes into a community and you knew them, you've been living in the community for the last, 5 years. Everybody likes you. It's a small community or it's a big community, right? And people know you and someone new comes into the community, but you knew them from childhood, right? You knew them from seminary, you knew them from yeshiva. And you know this real person, or you knew them from the previous community, right? And you're going to just make sure that everybody knows that this person is not going to ruin this community like they've done in other communities, right? Now, we're not talking about where there's actually, legitimate things to warn about. It's more of your feeling. You didn't get along with the person. You didn't clash. You clashed, right? You didn't mesh together, right? If there's actual, hard evidence, so that we spoke about before, it has to be go to the rabbi. There's certain ways of doing it. Make sure that they haven't changed, right? And hard evidence, right? We spoke about that. But this is sort of like a feeling, right? So what are you allowed to do? What you're not allowed to do? And the student of the Chaim Volozhin, right, in his book Loving Your Neighbor, right, it says like this: first, ask yourself, and again, you have to ask yourself. And I'm going to read this inside the last paragraph on page 195. So first, ask: would this behavior bother me if I liked this person? We're not saying that you have to like the person. I mean, you're supposed to love every person, but that's another conversation, right? But ask yourself, would this behavior bother you if you like this person? Isn't it possible that he was hired to take charge and get the office running more smoothly? Aren't there other managers in the company who have similar style? Usually managers, sometimes they have to be a little rough. They have to be a little, a healthy self-esteem, as we call it, not arrogance, but a healthy self-esteem. They have to be, stern. They have to be, they have to get things running, right? If you find that it's not so much what happened, but rather who was involved, then then your grips is personal, right, and not, right, principle, right? Your problem is a personal thing and not a professional thing. And this is something so important in our daily activities, our relationships, right? And this is something that we have to think about all the time. And those two questions are something so important. And if you like this person, would this bother you? Because someone that we like, we tolerate a lot of things. And we don't see it as bad as it is, right? People, our spouses, our children, our good friends, our neighbors, right? People that we like, our parents, right? We tolerate certain things. Everybody has something. Everybody has, some quirks or some personality, something that bothers us, right? Let's be honest, right? But we overlook it. We don't notice it. Right. Unfortunately, one of the common things of when couples are not getting along, all of a sudden, right? What happened? All of a sudden, these things start bothering you. All of a sudden, that the guy leaves his socks on the floor. I don't know. Maybe the girl leaves her socks on the floor. Right. Whatever it is. Right. All these things that all of a sudden they stop bothering you. No, they always bothered you, but it was overshadowed by the friendship, the relationship, the love that you had for each other. Now that that's gone, and everything just rises to the surface. All the negative, not negative in a bad way, but all the things that you don't like rise to the surface because there's nothing pushing them back down. So it's not something new. And that's one of the things in therapy that they try to tell them, not professional, but just one of the things is, this is not something new that happened. This is something that you just didn't care about, right? Because you had something that you saw positive. So let's see if we could, find that positive, right? And then, yes, we still have to maybe work on that, but that's sometimes it's someone's personality, right? And if we could find that positive again, then these things won't bother you. But if you're just focusing on that, right, that's not healthy because you knew about that in the beginning. You just never let it bother you. And subconsciously, you knew about that. It's yes, sometimes new things come up, but most of the time it's not. You just let it simmer, let it happen. It's the same thing with community, same thing with friendships, same thing with coworkers, bosses, right? And that's question number one you have to ask, right? If you like this person or you got along with this person, right? Or you didn't have a bad experience when you were a kid with this person or in a different place. Right? Even if you don't like the person, right? But you don't have a bad experience from previous times, would this really bother you? And then the other question, which again, similar, right? Are other people, other managers, other people in a similar situation, do they have similar character traits? Maybe not to the extreme of this person, right? But do they have similar character traits? So it means to say that brings it out that it's a personal thing. Because it doesn't really bother you that other people are doing it. Maybe it bothers you, but it's not something that you think that, they should get fired for. Maybe it bothers you, and it bothers you that other people are doing it also. Oh, these bosses are always getting on my case, right? It bothers you, but okay, whatever. You tolerate it because that's their boss. Whatever. They're your boss. They're department heads. They're on the penthouse floor, right? Whatever it is, right? That's part of their. So, but you don't think that they have to be told on and sent to HR and whatever it is. It must be something that's not that bad. It's part of the acceptable behavior of people in that. Maybe they should get a course in how to interact better. It's not something that you should tell on, right? And those are two important questions that we have to ask ourselves in our daily lives with our spouses, and with our friends, with our community people, and with siblings, with the parents, whatever it is, and coworkers, right? Is this righteous anger, or am I making it righteous anger? Right? Am I pretending that it's righteous? Am I thinking that it's righteous, but it's not really righteous? Right, so that's something very important to reflect on. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Emily.
I was going to say also in this scenario, someone, maybe this person, they're saying this high school teacher or this is being hired, to work in an office, as an office manager. And sometimes people's strengths and stuff like that, like they're very different in one area than another. So like maybe even if you as a parent didn't like the way this person taught, which again, the dynamic with your kid and that person, there's like a million details, there's a million parts to it. Like that person might be an excellent office manager, like it's not even the same thing. It's the person's working in a totally different capacity. So you don't know what that's going to be like.
Right. So, right, 100%. And that's something that's very important to consider also. Right. Good point, Emily. Right. That sometimes different jobs or different things bring out, other character traits of a person because it's not really their preference and they were forced into it, or they thought they were good at it or whatever. And being that they're not the best at it, it also they get frustrated and they take it out on someone, and it brings out bad character traits because it's not the profession that they're really good at. So if it's being a rabbi, if it's being a manager, if it's being a plumber, if it's being a lawyer, it's being a doctor, whatever it is, right? Doesn't make a difference. But yeah, very, very good point. That does. And also sometimes certain communities, right? There are certain people, 100%. At the bottom line is, right, that's still not an excuse for someone to behave badly, right? Just to put it out there, right? But it's something that we have to, as an individual, I don't want to use the word judging, but the individual that has that concern, right? To reflect on and say, it's a totally different situation. Maybe it was that job or that situation that brought out the bad in that person, at least the bad that I think, right? Let's give it a try over here and see how it is over here. Good point. Very good. Anybody else?
Rabbi, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning again. So am I understanding this in looking at someone who brings a scenario to you and you're looking at it in terms of, I don't know, righteous anger? Are we to consider the relationship that the individual who brings the circumstance to you has with the person they are bringing the situation about?
Okay, very good question. So you're flipping it around, and now you are saying someone did bring this to me, right?
Yes.
How am I supposed to react to this? Very good question.
Right.
So we've talked about similar situations in the past, but other cases, but it's always good. Every situation is slightly different, and that allows us to see this the rule in a much better way by talking about different scenarios. And the answer is yes, 100%. Right, 100%. You, as now the boss of the company, right, or the president of the shul, or the head of school, or whatever it is that you have a level of authority, right? And that's why the complaint was brought to you, right? You have to look into the complaint, right? As doing your due diligence, right? We're not allowed to be ignorant. But at the same time, part of what you're looking into is also looking into the person that brings the complaint, right? And this is something that unfortunately doesn't happen that often. And I've seen this, with friendships. I've seen this with community. I've seen this with kids in school, right? When a kid comes and complains about another kid, right? A lot of times, whoever is the one that's the first one to bring the complaint, the other kid is in trouble, right? And it's not always necessarily like that. You have to look at the whole situation. You have to see what really happened. And part of that is seeing past relationships of these two people, right? 100%. And you have, by seeing the past relationship of these two people, gives you an insight into what you're really looking at. Is this something that's really a problem? Maybe it's a slight problem, but maybe it was just blown out of proportion because of previous relationships. Yeah, 100%. It's something that you definitely have to put into your calculation when you are looking into the situation. But at the same time, it doesn't mean to say that you should just ignore it. If you, they just have an old feud, ignore it. Maybe this person got over it. Maybe this person asked themselves these questions, right? And they had old feuds, but this person has worked on themselves, asked themselves these questions, and he or she said, even though we had old feuds, I've looked deep inside myself. I've asked these questions, and I still think it's a problem, and that's why they bring the complaint to you, right? So it's definitely something that has to be considered and then put into the evaluation, the checking into the whole situation. But at the same time, it shouldn't be something that's thrown out just because they've had an old feud. And this is, again, not only in this situation of a coworker or a boss, right? But it's also with the community, with I've many times heard, don't worry about that. Those people, that person always complains, right? This person always, acts in a certain way, right? And just don't look into it. It's not true. Every situation has to be looked into, right? Every time. Yes, it is. This person has a history. This person has complained in the past. And we know these two people have history. We know these kids have history, but you have to look into it. Doesn't mean, again, that is part of the calculation that's being calculated, but it still has to be looked into. So it's sort of a combination of the two.
Thank you, Eva.
Of course. Anybody else? Okay, so let's finish off with a beautiful quote. The quote goes like this, and this is what we're talking about. Right? It's from Michelet. Michelet was written by King Solomon. Right? Hatred arises strife, but love covers all offenses. Right? And this is something that we all have to think about, right? When if you look at the building within, when you find yourself thinking that's not right, right? Use this as a cue to assess your personal feeling towards that person who has offended you, right? And again, it doesn't mean to say that it's not right. It doesn't mean to say that this time it's not right, right? But a lot of times, right, our feelings are governed by our reaction to something is governed by our feelings. As King Solomon himself said, right, 3,000 years ago, right, King Solomon said, right, hatred arises strife. Not liking someone, it doesn't have to be hatred, right, but not liking someone, not having a good feeling about someone, you notice all their negative character traits, right, and it blows up all the negative things, right, and love, right, covers all offenses, right. Why people, I'm sure we've all, why is it still staying with that person? Because they love each other, right? Because they're the best friends, and you know what, they're best friends, and they know that the person hurt them, and they said something bad, but they'll have a beer and they'll talk it out, and they'll say, please try not to do it again, but I love you, we grew up together, all right, we're best friends, right, and just please try not to do this again, right? But your friendship, right? Your love, your dedication to your kids, right? To your parents, to your coworkers, right? Covers a lot of things, right? And allows you to tolerate more things. And that's something that is extremely powerful to reflect on, but it's also a great tool, as we just said, because if something's constantly bothering you about someone, reevaluate your relationship with that person, right? Now, again, doesn't mean to say that the person didn't do it. And sometimes there's certain things that are just too far, right? And you have to take care of that, right? But this is a great tool to reflect on. So thank you all for joining us. I'm going to stop the recording.